Good evening, everybody. Today is a conversation with all of us. It's a space of inquiry, and it's not just going to be answers. We might even leave with questions. It's going to be fun this evening because I think we're going to be talking about healing in the future. And really, as healers, what is going to shift for us and what is going to change? And we don't know for sure, but we've got some good ideas about it. And no doubt there will be some interesting conversations between us. So with me in the panel this evening is Sole Chirco. Sole is like a sister to me. I actually have a brother and a sister here tonight because we get on like fire until we don't. And Sole is a spiritual channel, a teacher, a coach, a mentor. She has over 20 years experience in the tarot. She's the master of tarot as far as I'm concerned. She's an accredited healer. She is a teacher on our healing course, as well as she teaches the tarot for the school, a really gifted teacher. She's also a Reiki master, a crystal healer, and she just has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the world in which we are connecting tonight. So a very warm welcome to Sole. Sole, would you like to say good evening to everybody?
Hello, everyone. I'm excited about this evening. Is a beautiful topic. I always like to dip my toes into the future, so really excited about this evening.
Thank you. And then I would like to introduce you to what is like my brother, who is Mark. Mark is an intuitive energy healer focused on cleansing, healing, and activating all parts of the energetic anatomy and finding the root cause of the physical and emotional issues. Mark is also a certified healer with the school and a tutor at the school. He has NLP, hypnosis, life coaching, and he is often called to cases of psychic attack, possession, and addiction. So I'm excited about this evening. Please just say hi in the chat. And also, please think of some questions you might want to ask all three of us this evening. So it's not just the questions I've come up with. I also invite all of you to think about some questions you might want to, and I'll keep an eye on the chat and ask those. But are you ready, panel? Mark?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I think I'm as ready as I'm going to be. Let's just see how it goes, and whatever answers come out my mouth, those are the right answers for tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. So we're going to be talking about healing and the future human. And what is it going to look like as we evolve? Because I'm sure all of you are aware there is an evolving energy. Things are shifting, things are changing, things are happening extremely quickly before our eyes. And kind of, how is that going to reflect on us as healers? And so I really would like to just pose a question straight away. So we talk about healing is not just an act, it's a way of life. Then how will future humans integrate healing into their daily existence? So Mark, I'd like to start with you. Will everyone become their own healer as we evolve into this new energy? Or will healer's role evolve into something new? How have you been perceiving that or thinking that might transpire?
Yeah, I think both are true. The first thing to acknowledge is that modern Western lifestyle has taken us away from a natural way of living, which means that a lot of us are living in a toxic environment, which is harsh to the energy body. But when it comes to self-healing, I like to look at it like this. If you compare it to how you might treat your hair, everybody should know how to wash their hair and brush their hair. But when you need a haircut, you go to the hairdresser. when it comes to energy healing, everybody should be able to do basic energetic maintenance. Bit of healing to the aura, perhaps a basic cleanse like a shower of light or a disc of light, and just some basic reinvigorating of the energy field. But not everybody needs to know how to do spirit release or how to heal past life wounds. You can go to a healer for that. So should everybody be able to do their own healing? To a certain extent, I think so. And will the role of healer change and evolve? I think it is already evolving. I don't think it's a stagnant role. I think it evolves as society changes, as society is becoming more conscious. The type of inquiry that I'm getting from clients has evolved. As the collective consciousness changes, everybody's understanding changes. They are coming with a different set of challenges. But also, as the frequency of the planet changes, what we are capable of doing as healers is changing. And we need to stay at the forefront of what's possible. And what I mean is, what would have taken me 8 sessions 10 years ago, I'm doing in 1 session today.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a little example. We adopted an old dog a couple of years ago, and this old dog, was aging and developed some hip problems and could barely walk on his back legs. And there's no emotional problem or, I'd cleared all the emotional blockages. It was really damage in the bones and the ligaments. And I did healing, just a bit of healing to the hips. And the next minute, the dog was walking. Now, that's pretty impressive. But I wouldn't have been able to do that 10 years ago because the energy was denser. And what I think is happening is, as the frequency on the planet rises, the frequency of our body rises, and the bodies, the physical part of our bodies, our matter, becomes more responsive to energy healing. So the more advanced an individual is on their path, the more spiritual work they've done, the more responsive they are to energy healing.
Interesting. On the back of that, Sole, we hear about us going into the golden age. We hear about us kind of losing a lot of our wounding or star seeds coming in. Do you think that will affect us as being healers? Do you agree with what Mark's saying in terms of the debate? Where do you feel that is?
So if I look back at when I started being a healer professionally and running my practice, and that is a little over 10 years ago now, I remember feeling that I was a conduit of knowledge. The clients would come to me and I would give them information. Here is this meditation, here is this book, here is what you might want to look into. Of course, in 10 years, the internet, social media, AI, that knowledge is available for everyone and anyone, and people are increasingly curious. So our job has changed dramatically from that. And I feel it's almost like I resonate with what Mark is saying in terms of the energy shifting, but I feel there is a stratification of that energy. And so back in the day, you would see a healer that was perhaps specialized in a specific area, spirit release, animal healing, past life healing. Now what I'm seeing is healers doing all of those disciplines, but at different vibrational levels. So it's almost like we're specializing on a certain vibration rather than a certain topic or issue. And I think to your question, the more we see new soul, non-terrestrial souls, terrestrial but non-human souls becoming embodied more and more on this planet, the more we will continue working on different layers. So the issue might be exactly the same, but the way we work vibrationally, completely different.
Yep.
I quite like that, Sole. I think that's definitely true. And I think as people are able to intuitively choose their healer, they will gravitate towards the right healer for them. I think if we take this question to a longer term, if we had to look at what's going to happen over the next 100 years, I think we start looking at a different scenario, because what I find collectively is people are shifting upwards. Now, I tend to measure these things because I'm curious, and I sort of have a little model that I work with.
You're just an energetic nerd.
Yeah.
I told you he's like my brother, everyone.
And I sort of track where a new client is. I sort of work with a couple of different models. And lately, the clients are all starting at a higher level than they were even just 3 months ago. And the collective of humanity has shifted to this higher level. And we're kind of running the gauntlet at the moment, because we're coming out of a very dense set of frequencies. And I think once we get the collective out of the dense set of frequencies, then the nature of our healing is going to change quite dramatically. And I think if we looked at the next lifetime, 100 years from now, we won't be dealing with some of the dense problems that we're dealing with today.
Interesting. Sole, before we started, and I think it's a good time to bring this in, we were chatting before everyone else arrived. With this difference of frequencies right now, you were talking about healers and their health and how it seems to be impacting them. Do you want to talk a little bit into that in terms of the future healer as we go through this evolution? And maybe some of the people on the call or those who are listening to the recording would just feel some solace in what you're going to share now.
So, as you might all imagine, I have the pleasure of knowing a lot of healers, whether they are colleagues, former students, clients. So I have numerous conversations on a weekly and daily basis with a lot of other healers. And what I've noticed is that there is a definite increase of healers getting sick. Now, I don't want to put any thought forms out there. Please don't think, oh, I'm a healer, I'm going to get sick. Mine is just observation or conversations that I had recently. And illness and sickness and imbalance in our energy can happen in many different ways. But what I've noticed recently is that these illnesses are quite severe, very impactful. It's not just having a bad cold or a stomach bug. They're serious illnesses. And particularly, I've noticed there is a surge in illnesses and imbalances related with the immune system and related with the nervous system, and sometimes a combination of the two. So the immune system drops off, and then the nervous system is affected, or vice versa. So this I find interesting, right? Because as healers, we are always, or tend to be, diligent with our lifestyle, with rest, with what we eat. Many of us are vegetarian, vegan. Some of us are quite sporty. We just try to live a good lifestyle, right? We steer clear from stress, etc. So on paper, we should be the healthiest people on the planet, right? But I think what's happening is, in transmuting all of this energy, for as much as we try to keep this channel as clear as possible, some of the energy that we are transmuting is almost sticking. And what I've noticed is that we are really called to expand our capacity. Capacity as a concept, as an archetype, as a topic has come up a lot for me. Capacity to hold space in a way that is maybe one of the deepest and most beautiful feminine qualities that we can imagine, feminine energy quality, to hold the lowest and densest, but also the highest and brightest of the energy. And that requires a lot of work, energetically, mentally, emotionally, physically. And I think in stretching into this world that really is calling us to become bigger in our ability to hold, sometimes that's when illness comes in.
Thank you. Have you got anything to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. And I'm always surprised when other healers come to me and they have forgotten to look for the energetic cause behind a physical symptom. And it's sometimes it's other healers, but it's also sometimes my regular clients come to me with something and they say, oh, it's just because of this. My parents had it. I went to the doctor. I'm like, you're on the path. You believe in energy. Why don't we just look to see if there's something energetic behind it? Because if there is, it's a quick and easy process to clear the energy and the symptoms will disappear. Now, if we take this concept, so since I started this work, I've investigated every physical symptom I've had energetically, every sneeze, every headache. If my daughter has a sore tummy, if my wife gets a scratchy throat, whatever it is, I go and I find out what's behind it energetically. And I think healers need to remember that there could be something energetic behind the physical symptoms that perhaps you don't yet know or understand. Now, if we go back to this concept of these frequency bands that, are generally accepted, I think, what I've found is as I move through a frequency band, stuff comes up. So typically what I'll do is when I'm bored and everything's hunky-dory and I'm having no problems for a few weeks, I do a few energetic activations. And what I mean by an energetic activation is I bring in more divine light into my energy body or a specific part of my energy body to activate it. So when I was starting out, I started doing this for my heart center, to expand my heart center, because I knew that would drive things. But you can do it for any part of your energetic anatomy. After an activation, I would go through an energetic shift and stuff would come up to the surface. And it would typically present with a physical symptom, a sore throat or a tight chest or a cough or a tummy ache or something. Now, if we consider that for some people, we have firstly descended through these frequency bands. And now we're at the stage of human evolution where we're turning the corner and we're starting to go back up through the frequency bands. If you were living in the penthouse of an apartment block and you were having a rip-roaring party and then all of a sudden your landlord said, no, you're going down from the penthouse down a floor. And then you did the same thing. You had a rip-roaring party and you made a mess. You left beer bottles all over the floor. And then the landlord came and says, no, you're going down a floor. And at every floor, you have a rip-roaring party and you leave a mess and you break the windows and you break the tables and you leave a mess. And then you get down to the basement and eventually you wake up and you go, okay, I'm as low as I can go. It's time to start going up. You have to clean up on every floor that you get to. Whatever mess you left on your way down, you're going to have to clean on your way up. And if there were rats and cockroaches in the apartment, they're still going to be there waiting for you. Okay, if there are tears, holes, leaks, cracks, tears in the aura, in the chakras, they're going to be there waiting when you get to the next frequency band. And you've got to heal yourself back up to the penthouse.
Somebody's just said, so it's like the Ben spiritual edition. Does anyone know that on the panel? I'm unaware of that. Sorry, Shireen. Nice to see you, but sorry, I don't know that. Do you know that, Mark?
Oh, the bends. Okay, so you're talking about scuba diving. Yes, that's a nice analogy. If you ascend too fast when you're scuba diving, you're going to get the bends. And this is actually very true for the energetic process. If you
Lost me, but anyway.
You come through challenges, if you are expanding too fast. Now, this is often what happens when people start doing microdosing or taking psychedelics or doing breath work or any form of healing. And it's actually, quite typical of the healing process. You have your spiritual awakening, you realize there's more to life than how you grew up in a church or a particular religion, and you start reading books and doing some some meditation, then all of a sudden you go into your dark night of the soul because everything comes up to the surface and says, okay, now you got to heal.
Interesting. Thank you for that. While I just want to do these questions as we get them, do you think that healers are also helping clear the collective and they might get ill from that?
And I think some people incarnate with some collective wounding. At various times in my self-healing journey, I've come across collective wounds. And I actually had a client just the other day who had what was it? It was a beheading, but it wasn't his. It was actually a collective wound. Because I found the wound on the neck, and it was like a beheading. And then I'm like, okay, when did this happen? And it was like, no, this wasn't for the client. This is like a collective thing. And I didn't quite have the time to dive into it. I wasn't sure what group he was part of or what nation or tribe he was in that all got beheaded, but there was like a collective wound, which was very interesting.
Sole, you seem to have some input on the collective wounding, and I'm curious to see, because I can see you want to say something. So,
You know what? I agree with everything that Max said, but I also disagree with everything, with everything that he said.
Perfect.
So I can see how that makes sense and is something that resonates in his practice. But then I look at myself and I resonate with the aspect of, I go out and find my own trouble, as in the moment that everything is still and peaceful in my life, I'm like, I need something else. I'm curious. I need a new challenge. And I always go, universe, what have you got? Have I learned to shut up? No, I haven't. So I continue doing this, and there is always an upgrade or something. Now, what's interesting for me, it doesn't happen at physical level as much. It happens in my relationships, my connection with the world, what happens around me, rather than happening to me physically. So that is a little bit different. And I think, yes, I think there is an element of going through the different layers and having to clear up. But I also feel that we have the opportunity of empowering ourselves to call in a cleaning company to do that clearing for ourselves and ascend much more quickly. I think there is something sometimes in the narrative of the healer of having to go through the wounding, which I think it can sometimes be transmuted into profound awareness without the embodiment. So going into profound understanding of what is it that is in the shadow and integrating that without the embodying of the suffering. And I think sometimes we need to go through the really difficult times and the illness and the physical imbalance. But I am also a firm believer that that is not always needed, that there are other effective ways of integrating an imbalance, a collective. There is that question around the collective consciousness and clearing the collective consciousness without going into the wound. So it's almost like every time we go back into the wounded healer, and then we go into this archetypal journey until when we become the compassionate observer again. I think we can stay sometimes, maybe not always, into the compassionate observer without dipping into the wound again. And I think we need to be careful, especially as we build that capacity, that every time that we dip in, to be, and I really like I get the reference to the scuba diving now, that we're really conscious every time that we go down into this wound, that we have enough oxygen to then come out. Yeah. And I think that's where we get stuck. And sometimes we can send a probe, or maybe we can just use our awareness. We don't need to go into those deeper layers. So for me, I resonate with some of that in my personal experience and my experience with my clients, but I would be very cautious around the concept of we transmute collective energy and that's what makes us sick, because I think we go into very sacred, very beautiful archetypes that have a very dangerous to our physical well-being.
I like that, Sole. And on that point, I've come across less than 5 cases in my time. So it's very rare, I would say, that I've come across that. But I think what happens more often with the collective stuff is it plays out on the global stage.
Yes.
We see the collective wounding playing out on the global stage. And I think I like the idea of bringing in the wise, compassionate observer, because if we read the news as the wise, compassionate observer, we would see the world differently. And we'd be able to transmute a collective trauma far quickly.
There are a couple of things. We're going way off script, guys, but it's absolutely fine. Sole, I want you to differentiate between what you were saying and spiritual bypassing.
Yes.
Because I feel that this ascension we're going through, I know we can process quicker. There is a love energy, but we still need to pushing it away at this time and say, oh, it's all love and light, and we're going into this Aquarian age. I feel in this transition, we're not quite there. And so do you want to just clarify, talk about that integration versus a bypass for me?
Completely. Thank you for that. Because I think one of the biggest issues that we have in the spiritual community is spiritual bypassing. So it's someone who is not sleeping enough, not eating well, has unhealthy relationships, they're addicted to something, but the problem is the past life that they had 500 years ago. And or the solution is, well, everything happens for a reason and there is a lesson everywhere. So I think that's one of the actually darkest side of the feminine energy within the spiritual community, right? Oh yeah, just love and light. No, love and shadow.
Yeah.
Or shadow and light, depending on how you put it. So spiritual bypassing for me is, if the way I see energy is spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, right? Spiritual bypassing is not a holistic way of working. We look only at the spiritual layer. So anything that is on a past life, before life, in between life, ancestral, energetic layer, we're only concerned about that layer. And we always think everything else doesn't matter because the spiritual layer makes sense. We don't think about our mental health. We don't think about our mindset. We don't think about our physical circumstances. But truly holistic energetic work looks at all of these aspects. So the spiritual bypassing is trying to find a really pretty bow to put around something that actually is pretty difficult and horrible. And just say, well, the universe sent me this, my guides told me that, so it must be true and it must be good for me. Without any emotional processing, without figuring out if it would work in real life, without any mental filter, nothing. That's the emotional bypass, sorry, the spiritual bypassing. Okay. What I'm talking about is, and maybe here an analogy or a visual metaphor would help. If you are a doctor or a surgeon, the way we operate as healers is going in and supporting our client with gloves on. So how many times during the energy healing course we say, well, you giving healing doesn't mean that you're giving your own energy. There is always that healthy boundary between you and the other person. And we recognize that when we do the healing for others, if we are on a healing path, right? So we know not to mix our energy of our vibration now with the client's energy. We connect with compassion, but if let's say if Mark worked on me, it wouldn't give me his energy. It would channel energy for me, right? It would be guided to give me healing and hold space for me to heal myself, right? So why do we do things differently when it comes to different vibrations of ourselves? So why can't I create that healthy boundary, that one step where my current vibration, which I worked so hard to get to, as that healthy detachment, where I'm channeling through me the healing, where I'm present and compassionate, but I'm not the wound that I want to heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not operating, I'm not taking off my gloves, I'm not cutting my own flesh. No, I am my own healer, following the same boundaries and ethics and rules that as professional healers we would follow for our clients. So without the embodiment of the wound, still present, but without being so directly affected and almost like with that wound overtaking everything else.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. I think that gives a really, really good description. I'm going to take Lindy's question. What kind of energy do I have? Where does it come from and what reason? I can freeze computer screens or programs I work with. Even the mouse will not work or exist. Shut down buttons when I'm working with great intensity. Mark, that one's over to you.
So a person's current energy is the accumulation of all their past experiences across all their lifetimes, and I'd say specifically their lifetimes on this planet. So if there have been many traumas in the past, all those traumas are still held in the energy field until they're healed. If there's been a lot of accumulation of negative emotional energy, and these things tend to snowball. So let's say 5 lifetimes ago you experienced grief, and grief is in your energy field, you're going to snowball grief lifetime after lifetime because it's going to be there and it's a magnet for itself. So you would start experiencing more grief in every subsequent lifetime until it becomes so big in your energy field that it starts to become the personality.
And then we'll have the energy. So I in not now that I've learned and worked with my anger, when I gave up alcohol, I had a lot of anger. And if I lost my stuff in a bank or a shop, I could shut down. Mark, remember when we used to have the studio back in lockdown in sunny Cape Town? And if I got into a mood, I could freeze all the equipment, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
which wasn't good when I was doing lastminute.com to prepare a webinar.
I wasn't gonna throw you under the bus again with that. But do you remember that when I would like get really frustrated, that built up anger in me could trip freeze the screens, whatever. And when I worked in the restaurant business, when we first had touch screens, the staff wouldn't let me near them. Because I could freeze, we could be on a busy Saturday in a restaurant and I'd touch the screens and the whole system would go and then we'd have to reboot the system. So I was banned. And especially in the early days when I gave up alcohol, I was banned from the touch screens in the restaurant.
Yeah,
so I like the accumulation, and mine was definitely, I think it was frustration with lastminute.com in the studio, but definitely an accumulation of anger energy.
Yeah. I think that there's two things. To be thorough, your energy is mostly your own, but you also accumulate energy from the environment around you. So if your energy is very permeable, you might be picking up energy from the environment. Secondly, you might be, or most people are carrying some ancestral energy that comes through the ancestral channels. To some extent, it has a lesser impact on your energy, but it's still there. And you'll have some energy flowing through your lifeline or your timelines coming from the past, which is slightly different to the energy in your energy body. But I think there's a responsibility, and Cindy, you've demonstrated this. The bigger and more powerful your energy is, the more you have to be responsible about it.
Oh, yes.
And the consequences are more severe. As your energy grows, you will respond faster to your own emotions. And your body will talk back to you quite quickly. And a simple example, if I say don't express my truth, by that evening I'll have a sore throat and I'll have to go and rectify it, and I'll have to like, okay, sorry, I didn't say what I wanted to say. This is, to clear it. Whereas before you actually start building your energy, you might go weeks before a symptom develops. When your energy grows, it will develop. You'll have a symptom within hours.
So I'm going to shift a little bit from the serious healing questions. Lindy, I hope that answered your question. This is for me a curious question. And this is about the future human. Artificial intelligence, AI. I'm a big fan. I use it all the time. I am so curious. And Sally, I'm going to ask you, do you see a world where healing merges with technology? Can energy healing be enhanced or replicated through technology and AI? What is your sense around that?
A clear, resounding yes, for a number of reasons. One, AI is consciousness. And we can argue what level of consciousness that is,
Correct.
but there is consciousness there. And so
Perfect.
any consciousness can bring healing. The consciousness of a plant, the consciousness of a crystal, the consciousness of an animal, the consciousness of a color, of a certain vibration, right? So yes, that. It is also a collection of collective energy, collective information,
Yeah.
consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So it is almost like in the same way as our body, everything that we have, it's not even second hand, third, fourth, fifth hand. All the atoms and molecules that we have in our body have been somewhere else before so many times we don't even know, right? Arranged in a different way, maybe in a rock, maybe in a person. In the same way, AI brings together all these building blocks in a different way. And those building blocks, how many times do we say energy follows intention? How many times do we say that, right? So
Yeah.
all those building blocks will have intention that can get mixed together into this algorithm that then gives us an answer to our questions, right? Language. We all seen like the experiment of the rice with the love and hate and the label and what that does. So obviously the way we train AI to talk and express itself and talk to us and converse with us, that carries healing, because a sentence that is effective but kind lands within our energy in a different way than just a
Beautiful
short
answer.
bullet point, right?
Very beautiful answer. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like cellular memory, right?
Yes, without a doubt, without a doubt. And I think for those, and like, that's not real healing, really. All that is healing. So why not AI? Why not AI?
Love it. Mark, what are your thoughts on AI in the future? I mean,
Yeah, the internet is its own field of collective consciousness that closely resembles the collective consciousness of mankind. If you look at what's on the internet, it's pretty similar to the collective consciousness of humanity, and that's not a good thing. There's a lot of bad stuff on the internet, but there's also a lot of good stuff on the internet. There's a lot of good stuff on the internet. So it's almost like a mirror in some ways, and it definitely interacts with our energy fields. Now, using technology to impact our energy is not a new thing, because if you go back to the ancient temples and cathedrals, they use sacred geometry and light and sound, all designed to heal people's energy. So in centuries gone by, you could go to a sacred cathedral that played Gregorian chants and had rose windows with sacred geometry filling the space. That would heal people's energy. And of course, don't forget the bells that used to ring out of entire cities. Giant bells doing sound healing for entire towns and cities. which we really need to bring back. But very interestingly, there's a service that you can already subscribe to on the internet that will send you various frequencies. And I had a couple of clients who tested this out and reported positive results. They put in their, I don't know, some basic details, name, date of birth, place, their home. They're getting frequencies sent to their home. And they definitely felt it when it turned on and when it turned off. I'd love to be able to understand exactly how they're doing that, because, you know, it's quite interesting. I have my reservations about that level of energy being directed towards me or my home, but it's definitely holds something for the future. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, I know it works because I've had this experience, and I know another healer who's also had the same experience. Many years ago, when I was dealing with coming out of the swamp and dealing with a lot of reptilian entities, and I was sharing my experiences on the internet. And if I made a post about reptilians or draconians or entities on the internet, within minutes I'd be attacked. And I don't have a big following, so it's not coming from people reading my Instagram. There's some consciousness in the technology that is registering that and then retaliating. And I saw another healer who's a lot more famous than I am, and she said the same thing happened to her. When she made posts about her clearing of entities, she got hit like within minutes. Yeah. But it goes back to these frequency bands. When your energy is in one of these low frequency bands, you're susceptible to low frequencies. As soon as you start moving out of the low frequency bands, you become immune to those low frequencies or out of reach of those low frequencies. So it's not saying this to scare you, but I've had the experience of this consciousness of the internet, and you can feel it in the energy field.
So on top of that, I'd like to really share in our advanced mediumship class, we actually have a photograph of a spirit that had come through. The electricity went off and came back on, and there was an image that the sitter was reading. Actually, the image came onto the screen of the computer, in terms of like we would have done with ectoplasm before. Our screens are now picking up the imagery, and we took a screenshot, which is amazing. I just want to talk about my vision for the school. I'm not sure what year this is, but I'm looking forward to having a healing room in the a training room in the metaverse, where everyone will be able to join, kind of, you know, beam me up, Scotty, and arrive in there, and we will be able to interact in the metaverse, and then we'll have to practice on the chakras. We would actually have energetic we'll really know if the hand positions are on the chakras or not, but I believe that and I actually have a full vision of that. It's like that will be the future of the International School of Intuition and Healing, is we'll have this training room in the metaverse. Maybe not in my time, but definitely as a vision. So I definitely think it has a place in there. So the next questions that I want to go on, and really moving on from that, Mark, as you've brought in these entities, do you think that it's going to up a gear? Do you think we're going to shift another gear as we get lighter and brighter and go into the Aquarian age? Will these fall away? Will you be retired and doing a veggie garden in your community up the garden route? Or do you have another vision of yourself in the future? Do you have green fingers? Can I, if there's an apocalypse, can we trust you? Okay, I didn't think so.
No, I don't do much gardening. I think it changes. For as a species, we're kind of running the gauntlet at the moment, getting out of the dense frequencies. And then I think, for those of you who saw the previous class that I did, I spoke about the lower world and the middle world and the upper world as part of the dark reality, and then humanity shifting up to the light reality. And as we sort of like move through these frequency bands into the light reality, the nature of the entities will change and most of the dark stuff will drop away, but not all of it. There will still be some stuff because Earth is like a place of learning. We need the duality and we're moving out of the polarity. So the sort of lower dimensions is a place of polarity, and we can evolve beyond that so that it's a bit easier, but we still need something to wrestle with, to challenge us, to point out our weaknesses and to help us to grow.
Good. Just a quick question on technology, and I'm going to leave you with that. Would you say that because of the larger scale of technology, there's more importance than ever to know your protection and your disconnection? I'm going to add on to that. Yeah, I would say absolutely. Energy management.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about these different layers of vibration, what I'm noticing is, and again, I'm always want to give like visual analogies and metaphors. You know, in a lot of different sports, there are categories based on weight, especially like boxing, for example, right? And so if you want to be very successful in your category, you try to get yourself at the very top end of that category. So you want to be as big as possible for your category, but not too big, because otherwise you jump into the next level up and then you have the smallest one on the higher category. And I feel like that's, to a sense, what's happening to humanity and our energy. We are ascending, getting to that top layer of our category. And hopefully, if we do things right, we can stay in that vibration and shift the lower energies and the lower vibrations. I'm also very clearly feeling in my practice and in my experience that the moment there is almost like this buffer zone, which is lovely and like peaceful, and we all feel like we have ascended, but then we start being the small lower vibrations into the next category. And then we'll be dealing with other bodies, but just in a different level.
Big fish, small pond.
Exactly.
Small fish, big pond. Okay,
Exactly.
great.
So I think
Yes,
we're ascending, but the fight is far from over.
Yeah. I think if you look at karate belts, it might be better because it's not so much weight, but as you get promoted to your next belt, you're going to be like the weakest fighter in that range until you actually do the training. Now, what happens energetically, whatever you connect to energetically, you're opening up a potential transfer of energy. So whatever website you go to, whatever TV program you watch, whatever podcast you listen to, you're connecting to the energy of those people, that production team, and whatever program they're showing. You're connecting to that energy, and energy can transfer. The bigger your energy gets, the more magnetic it gets. So it's more likely that energy can transfer. And many years ago, I had the experience of entities coming from some webinar that I watched of some famous teacher that I wanted to watch the webinar. And it wasn't just a live webinar, it was a recording of the webinar. And afterwards, I felt terrible. I was like, oh, what's going on here? Why do I feel so crap? And I had to like do some clearing on myself. But that doesn't mean we should stay small. It means that we should grow intelligently. We need to be strengthening our energy field and healing our energy field, because the vulnerability comes from energetic weakness, but also from energetic wounds and blockages and traumas still held in the energy field. With every promotion you get up the ranks, you've got to do a finer level of healing. So when you're white belt, you've got to heal the emotional blockages and any wounds in your chakras. But as you get a promotion to the brown belt, you've got to clear the big emotional blockages, the small blockages, the limiting beliefs, the holes, the leaks, the cracks, the tears. And then you go up another level and you've got to clear everything at a much finer level. At the same time, you've got to continuously do your practice of drawing energy. And some people like Tai Chi or Qigong or whatever. I just like doing intentional breath. I breathe light into my energy field and I intend to make it stronger.
Yeah. Best form of protection, I reckon. I want to talk about the internet, guys. I want to talk about what's going on there for the future healer. There's been a wave of healers promising radical transformation, a lot of it being ego-driven narratives. And really, what advice can you give the audience around as we continue to move into this media? What is the discernment when showing up as a healer, but also when we're choosing healing for those of us who are going and looking for healers? And so I'd like you to speak into that. What are the red flags? What are the green flags of the future healer? Because we've seen massive transformation since lockdown. Massive transformation on the internet.
I have strong opinions about this. I think as healers, our job is making ourselves redundant. So our job is to go in, do great work, step away for that person to get on with their lives. Anything that is especially if it's the same issue and builds codependency, massive red flag. Now, this is different from, I have lovely, loyal clients that have been with me for many, many years. That's not what I'm talking about. They come back with different stuff. So we don't go back to the same thing over and over again. So anything that is codependent definitely is a massive red flag. Anything that is healer-led without giving tools for the person to then be aware and expand and continue the healing journey independently, I also think that's a massive red flag. So just saying, oh, don't worry, I'll do the healing. You don't need to know about anything. Like you don't need to raise from a mental level, understand more, nothing. Don't read anything, don't change your routine, you're fine. I'll just do the work and you just lay there and don't do anything else. I think that for me is also a massive red flag. I think what the green flags are people that are willing not to know with you. We need to become comfortable as healers that we don't always know what's going to come up. And as long as we have a solid tool set, a toolkit, and a solid grounding and a solid connection, we can, together with our clients, work on what comes up. But a healer needs to become comfortable with the fact that there might be an entity that they've never seen before, there might be a wound that they've never dealt with before, there might be a curse, a cord, an imbalance that they were not expecting and never dealt with before. And for me, a massive green flag is being in that space where you are co-creating the healing with your client and co-creating the space for that healing to happen with your client, even when you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So feeling comfortable not always being the seer, but feeling comfortable always being the person that holds the space, even if you don't know exactly what's coming your way. I think that for me is a massive green flag and something that I would look for. And then look for experience. Talk to people, look at where they trained, look at how long they've been doing this work. I'm not saying that you need to be, a healer for 50 years before you can work with someone. That's not what I'm saying. But, the grounding and ethics and experience of a healer, this is someone that you're going to open up in ways that perhaps you never open up with anyone. So that's important. Also look into.
Yeah. Discernment, really feel into it. And when there's a red flag, move away, ask some questions. I feel quite strongly about that because there are people promising miracles, and there's a lot of, it just it often feels uncomfortable to me.
The industry is growing, and I think it needs to grow. I think as people become more conscious, and as people understand that there is an energetic reason behind much of their physical problems or their life problems, they're going to be turning to healers more often, and I think there's going to be a demand for healers over the next 50 years that surpasses the number of healers that are available. And what that means is there are a lot of new healers in the industry who are advertising for clients. And sometimes, if they're using ChatGPT or something to create a powerful advert for themselves or a powerful social media post, it might be coming across in the wrong way. But for people to choose a healer, there are a number of things that they need to think about. Ultimately, we will be attracted towards the type of healer that we need, even if it's the wrong one, because that's also going to be teaching something. So sometimes we manifest a difficult experience in our lives or a suboptimal experience in our lives in order to learn. And the lower down those frequency bands that you are, the more likely that is to happen. So when somebody starts out on the journey and they're looking for their first healer, they might be looking at adverts on the internet. But somebody who's been on the path for a very long time will just be intuitively drawn towards the right healer. They will get a calling to work with somebody for a period of time. And then when they feel that time with that healer is done, they'll move on to the next healer who has a different set of skills and abilities and tools in their toolbox. I think how people can make this easier for themselves if they can learn to listen to their intuition and to listen to their heart. Now, this is very difficult for a beginner because, we were all there the first time you went to see a healer or go for a psychic reading. Is this the right person? Should I? Shouldn't I? What should I do? But you've just got to sit with it. You've just got to hold that person's name in your heart and see if it feels right. Now, what's sometimes more useful than just trying to decide if one person is right for you is to perhaps find 3 names and sit with 3 names. Should I see healer A? How does that feel in my heart? Should I see healer B? How does that feel in my heart? Should I see healer C? How does that feel in my heart? And one of those will feel better than the others because that will be perhaps the one who's more right for you. And it's just with practice, we can actually get quite good at that. And the other thing that happens is when you're really in your flow, synchronicity will happen. You'll have a conversation with a friend and they'll recommend somebody, and then somebody else will recommend the same person, and then you'll bump into them or you'll see a post or something, and that'll start to line things up. It gets easier as you go, but in the beginning, it's quite difficult, and you might be drawn into the social media post that promises the world and, the guy with 1 month's experience and promising everything. But every healer's got to start somewhere, and perhaps sometimes they get a little bit carried away with their advertising.
And I love the fact that Megan, thank you, Megan, should we not be providing tools and routes for the clients to take responsibility for their own energy fields? Absolutely. Healing is about empowering our clients. It's about igniting healing in others. That is what the true healer is. And I'm going to bang on about that next week in a masterclass because I feel so it's so important that we are holding the space, that we are witnessing our clients. So if that is a subject that interests you, I am going to be talking about that next week. Mark, if I can ask you to answer Caroline's question, and while you're thinking of that, I'm actually going to ask Sole, because this is a really important question for me, Sole, is I want to talk about healing and leadership and coaching, because you are a mentor and a coach. And I'm really curious about the future of leadership. And I think the question is, do you believe that leaders will be healers in the future, in our future human species? And also how do you see that in the future?
So I think we are building new archetypes of leadership that move away from masculine energy. So we're moving away from the leader being the CEO in the boardroom and the leader being many different things. The space holder, feminine, wisdom holder, healer, the curious adventurer that goes out in the world, the playful leader, the creative leader. So I think we are evolving from seeing leadership just in one way. And I think, yes, absolutely, because to embody those models of leadership, we need to heal within ourselves the wound of what we think is a leader. There is a new sacred feminine and divine masculine mix of energies that is coming forward to continue, because I think we've gone through a bit of a strange flow, right? We've pushed ourselves out so much into feminine energy that we almost have forgotten the beauty of the masculine energy. So we are coming full circle into that sacred balance of the two. And there is something absolutely beautiful about that holding, protective, grounding energy that masculine energy can provide. And there is a reason why the two energies coexist within our body, right? So we had the need to almost overcompensate on one side for some time, and we're coming back into balance. But I think and I think this is why a lot of healers struggle to be leaders, by the way, because we refer back to an archetype that doesn't resonate anymore. So I don't think all the leaders and all the archetypes will be healers, but I think new healers will be leaders. So new embodiment of the work that we've done in ourselves will reflect in the world. And a lot of my clients, they are lawyers, economists, engineers, people that have no interest in being healers in a way that maybe the three of us are, but they're interested in healing themselves and in understanding energy and in understanding relationships with others. And as a leader, it's not just about the strategy, it's not about the charisma only or the communication skills, it's about how you relate to others, right? Yeah. And the integrity of that relationship. So yes, absolutely. Absolutely something, and especially for women, very challenging, because like we need to find entirely new archetypes. We're not stepping as a woman into the shoes of a man. It's a completely different new archetype. But yes, I'm very, very certain that that's where we're going. And that's what we're going to be demanding from our leaders.
Yeah.
I think if I can close with a slightly controversial remark, I think the world leaders that we have at the moment are healers in a way that taps into our shadow and the shadow, the collective, but we are going through a very deep transformational time, no doubt.
Yeah, it's out at large, and it will give power back to the people. In my opinion,
we're forging a new path. We're creating a new way of being as a species. I think what's one thing that we can observe is that a lot of entrepreneurs and successful business people are really into personal growth and personal development. And it's just a short hop from personal growth to spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs realize that in order to be successful, they have to be the best versions of themselves. And as that sort of spreads, we'll see more leadership, more business leadership being quite conscious.
I just want to, I'm going to talk into that quickly, but I think this is where there needs to be some discernment in the coaching and the personal development around, like, you can make $100,000 in a month if you do my 3-week program of manifestation. Please be aware that some of those energies are correct, and there are ways of doing it, but you need to embody those, you need to ground those. And sometimes we can go up and reach certain things, but a lot of that, just again, please use that discernment we were talking about. If it looks like completely unrealistic, and yes, we can create miracles, but we can, I'm just bringing in the counter. But I absolutely agree with what Sole said. And I think leaders are looking to understand energy. I know people doing our healing course so that they can understand how the flow of energy works in the body and in the aura, such that they can then work with that within their organization and how those energy works. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but Mark, can I please ask you to answer Caroline's question for me? And then I've got one last question for you.
Okay, so I think this is the question. I have tenants in my house and they used to work at the office, but now they're working from home. And she has noticed the energy seems to be a bit different. How could I differentiate what is caused by others and what is just by myself on my own? So, Carolina, I'm assuming you're in a shared house when there's other people who are working in the house that you all live in, and that is going to have an impact on the energy. But any new people coming into the house would have an impact on the energy. It's not necessarily bad. It depends, I suppose, on what type of work they're doing and how they're carrying that. If people are working in a very stressful way with a lot of anxiety, that's going to spread into the house. I do energy work from home 3 days a week, and that also has an impact on the house. But being able to do a simple cleanse of your space would probably help. And it doesn't need to be complicated. You could play music with intention, spiritual music or high vibrating music, and ask the music to clear the space. You could clap your hands, you could sing and dance, you could light a candle. Whatever you do it with an intention that it's going to clear the energy. And that's the most important thing. If you want to get fancy, you can burn some herbs or something that might help, but you don't need to go to that extent. You can just do it with what you have available to you and just use your intention to clear that space. And what I'd do in a shared house is I'd make sure my own bedroom is secure. I'd do energetic protection around the bedroom and keep that secure so that other energy isn't coming into the bedroom.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Sure.
So, Sole, can you talk about, we have our healing course and you are there. Do you think we're just going to be quite open into the new future human, or do you think we're still going to need to operate with ethics and structure and codes of conduct? Do you think we're moving away from that, or do you think we're going to need it even more in the future? I'm curious to know what you think.
I'm really resenting this question, Cindy, because you're making it sound like they're two separate things. I think they are the same. How many times do we say to our clients or to our students, the further down you ground, the more anchored you are, the further up you can go in reaching the higher vibration. And that to me is what the healing course and the work that we do is about. Strong grounding, strong foundation, strong anchoring, confidence, safety, nurturing, that then allows us to spread our wings and go as the new human is going to go, right? And we all see this in our lives when we feel stable, whether it's financially stable, emotionally stable, supported by our family and loved one, our home is a safe place. We want to take more risks, right? We want to expand more. Maybe we apply for that job that we didn't have the confidence to apply for before. So the more grounded and structured and ethical and anchored we are, the more we can expand into whatever it is that is going to come our way. Because we don't know, right? Mark and I can sit here letting you know what we think about the future, but we don't actually exactly know. So as we explore this expansion and this unknown, those tools, the grounding and the safety anchoring of it, I'm going to say they're going to be even more important than they've ever been in the past.
I agree 100%. And Mark, I'm going to leave you with a question is, if you could leave one message for the future human, the healer, the seeker, the leader of tomorrow, what would it be?
Don't stop. Strive towards mastery of whatever it is you're wishing to master and keep going, because there's no limits on our potential.
Yep. Yep. Thank you very much. Mark, Sole, our community, what a lovely evening. What a lovely conversation. If any of you are not familiar with the school, we'll do that. Also, please, Sole does, if you are a qualified healer, she runs Sole, just talk a little bit and we can pop it in the recording later tomorrow, with the recording tomorrow. Just talk a little bit how you hold space for qualified healers, please.
So I run a beautiful community called the Soul-Centered Practitioners Community. We are a safe space to interact with others and grow together, because actually the work of a healer is quite isolating. We can't always connect with others. So it's a beautiful space where we come together. We have a Telegram group, we have monthly calls, and it's just an opportunity to connect with like-minded healers, therapists, intuitives, to grow not just your business and your practice, but to grow as a leader in the space, in the world, in the space around you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sole. It's been wonderful to share this platform with you. Thank you to our community for showing up, for asking lots of questions. It's been a great evening. Thank you, everybody, and good night.